All right. I actually don't know when these were posted. It does say 11:36 a.m. I don't know if that's my time exactly or whatever. I'm pretty sure it is. So I just missed these yesterday. So it's probably old news for a lot of people. And this will get posted after I talk about 4.4. So it'll be posted tonight probably. But Declan, who was on camera for some CitizenCon panels the last 2 years about either crafting or base building or a combination of the two. If we're talking about last year, he seems to be one of the leads on these systems, right? And the first startup of a brand no, just kidding. The first post is about this is the we're going to get through the difficult one for me first. We're going to read it and then I'm going to talk about it. Hello, within a region, for example, Europe, a copy of every land claim base will exist on all shards. So the same land claim cannot be taken by two different people. So okay, I can't help myself but pause even after the first sentence. So here's all the good and the bad with that. The good is your land claim is unique to, I think it's totally fine that we're not going to have a single shard. I think it's totally fine that those shards are going to be based in Europe or America or whatever, like we see the shards today. Regional. What I don't like is that we're currently talking about many, many shards in one region. I hope the goal is one regional shard per region with lots of dynamic servers and meshing, right? So I think he's setting the expectations of how you will see this initially and not how it is intended to be long term. But yeah, I'm not sure. So I think it's cool that you can have your location, but it is like the first thing that I said or thought was like, oof. Like, why are we being broken up into like tiny, I don't know, like Conan Exiles servers or I don't know, space engineers or something. Like that's kind of what it feels like. Latency? No. The regional choice is because of latency. That is why I'm okay with that. This isn't EVE Online. As much as I want some systems from EVE Online, I understand that the fact that you are in a first-person environment, that the need for speed is the thing that came to my mind. Keep in mind, I've only slept 2 hours because the patch came out at 11 p.m. last night, and it's 6 a.m. now. So I did everything I could, and I'm a little behind. So, okay. The need for, it's an FPS game. You got to have a good tick rate. You don't need a good tick rate in EVE Online. The tick rate is literally 1 frame per second. That's what it is. It's a very small tick rate in comparison to what Star Citizen needs, right? So you can't have EVE Online and stars in a Star Citizen universe. It is not a thing. So that is the need for a regional shard. But with dynamic meshing, in theory, there is no need for more than one shard in each region, in theory. But how do we know without it being in practice? So I think with one sentence here, he's kind of letting us know how we'll see it first and not how we'll see it long term. If they do not go for a if we don't end up with a system like that, I think this game is being built on a foundation that it was never understood of what it was supposed to be. Like the player interaction is the most important thing, and if this is the way we're going to do it, it's going to be pretty broken, I think, and very weird, and immersion breaking. Everything I read here, and we'll get to it, is it breaks the entire immersion of the game. All right. Now, assuming the owner has opened up their base to the public, and this is, I would assume, in Stanton, because why would you open your base to the public in like a Pyro? But you can access their player-run store on any copy of the base or use their crafting and refining facilities if you have permission to do so. I mean, I guess that applies to Pyro too, but who the fuck would open up a Pyro store that could be raided, right? For the stores, the inventory of what's for sale is shared across all shards. So that's good for the initial release. So whoever, if we're selling in this is nice for your org, absolutely. That's a great thing. But again, it's great for a bad system. It's great for a system that isn't an MMO. It's like me and my friends are running a server together, right? But we want to be able to sell stuff to people in other servers. This is Test Squadron is playing over here on their own server. And, the Imperium or whatever is playing over here on their own server. And that's all they do. So it is not, I don't want to say bad, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal to be split up. So, the whole idea of Star Citizen growing up 10 years ago was not to be like this. And these are the solutions based off of the not ideal situation that they have in front of them. So it's both good because I think it is the best solution in both sentences that we've read so far for a bad situation. Right? Best solution for a bad situation. Now, however, when it comes to raiding a base, this can only occur on a single shard. Makes sense, right? Because you want to have attackers and defenders. Which shard this happens to be is dynamic depending on the circumstances. The easiest example is if the owner of the base is online and at their base, then the shard they're on is the only shard where the base can be raided. If you attempt to attack the base and you are not on the correct shard, then you will be given the option to transfer to the correct shard. Likewise, part of your org members arriving to defend would be transferred to the shard where it's kicking off so they're able to help. Again, so immersion breaking, so not what I would like, but the best of a bad situation. Right? The best of a bad situation. Shard traversal is something I haven't thought about, to be honest. The first thing I wrote when I saw this? So there are loading screens in Star Citizen. Interesting. This breaks everything that they've built their game on. No loading screens, fully traversal, immersion. This is such a convoluted system. It's not that convoluted. It is load me to where I need to go. But it's just immersion breaking. You are at a base looking at it, and you are ready to raid that base. Hold up. Let me hit a 2-minute loading screen before I do that real quick. Right? Little bit weird. The area is already loaded, right? The only thing is to change the shard you're connected to. The only thing like that is, that's like no big deal. All right. So that's that. I really don't have a lot much more to say on this is the best of a bad situation for this one. And I really hope we get to EU, the EU shard, because you will never have a sandbox experience that is meaningful if we are split up too much. Now, if there are 2 copies of Europe, one Eastern, one Western, or one Central, or whatever, if there's 2 copies of America, East and West, and maybe South, 3 there, that's not bad either. That's not the end of the world. Because theoretically, you would hope to have 3,000 to 5,000 people online. That would be like the shard cap. And you want the things that happen on those shards to be meaningful. That's what a sandbox is, right? Is like, I build my base there. I've made my name there. I have done these things there. I have changed the landscape of the game. Maybe not physically, like a Minecraft or something, but you've made an impact on the world and its story in some way as a player versus a player, right? What happens when I'm buying at a store and the base gets rated on a different one? Can I still play? Yeah, you're not rating the base. They're just like, if you want to attack it, they just tell you, they give you a portal to get there, basically. But if the base dies, it'll just disappear around you. What would be funny is, and this would be one of the first things I would test, maybe, build a base, put a store in it, be on a different shard, be inside the base, buy something from it, have it sit in the freight elevator that's there, kill the base on the other shard. What happens to the stuff I just bought? Does it just like go to your home location or something? It'd be crazy if, your inventory that you own there just disappeared. But that's my thoughts on this stuff. Best of a bad situation. The goal better still be to get to as few shards as possible with as many servers as needed to run a good MMO sandboxy theme parky experience. It's going to be a combination of the two. People keep calling Star Citizen a sandbox at the company, which they have never done anything sandbox related in the game. And a lot of people in the community are like, it's a theme park, it's a theme park, it's a theme park. Not necessarily. They're just focused on some theme parky things this year and clearly going into 2026. Sand Park, yes. It's also kind of its own thing. And that's what makes it nothing. But that's my thing here is where my energy or focus is on is as we see meshing improve, dynamic meshing come in, how close do we get to a single European shard? How close do we get to a single American shard? Right? Yeah, it's not a sandbox, it's a litter box right now. How close do we get to those things? Because then this problem here is much less of an issue. Much, much less of an issue. Okay. Next one. This is the crafting one. I got tagged, not for this post, but the next one, 50 fucking times yesterday. I am not complaining about it. That is awesome. The fact that like 50 people knew how important this was to me, I feel like very grateful and very cool. Like I don't feel like a cool person. I felt like that was cool. I am not a cool person. Now, for tech preview, this is about the crafting tech preview. The fabricator can input and output from your location inventory if it's within your hangar. So in your example, which we don't see because he didn't use the reply feature, I don't think. with 232 SU containers of iron and copper. So long as you have them stored away in your freight elevator, they'll appear as materials to select within the UI. Fantastic. That was my only point of contention that I saw in the crafting tech preview. I have no problem. It took me a while to get to the point where I had no problem that we were moving the fabricator around. But that's great that it's there. Beyond tech preview, it'll be more flexible, being able to connect to a ship cargo grid or inventory for input of materials and output of items. Good. Not much to say there. That's good. I just really want to get away from, if I interact with any material, that my whole life is moving boxes. Like I got to get away from that, dude. It is not cool. It is not cool. It is so brutally time consuming and just not cool. That's it. Like, good, great, love it. I got a lot to say on this next one. Hello. Yes, the LTP issues with resources is looking to be addressed. I don't know, again, what this was about. Can say, y'all lost your medals, the pristine medals, for the last 2 patches. In the bug fix section of 4.4, that's one of the bug fixes. So, potential fixes. So yeah, they're working on the LTP stuff. Now for the actual meat of this. For blueprints, they will persist through patches, but are not permanently bound to your account like event rewards. So if there was ever to be a full wipe, they would be lost. What he means by this is they're bound to your account, but not they're not going to be with you on the launch of the game, which is totally fine. And potentially, a percentage of them lost on Death of a Spaceman if they continue to do that, which I hate that idea, but it is what it is. I backed that vision, so I can't complain much about it. The expectation to this rule is some cosmetic blueprints, because you bought them. Again, this is why I'm concerned with crafting, is because Declan appears to live somewhere in between the guy who makes the gameplay that will drive Star Citizen as a game and the guy who wants to make sure that the pledge store is still a viable thing that people pledge and pay during the game's launch, which is obviously fine. They need to make money. But what I'm getting the vibe of is we need to create a problem to sell a solution, and the pay-to-win mechanics that are being proposed here are not good. Okay, here's where it starts to get good. The long-term goal with cosmetics/paints is to convert them to a blueprint so they are no longer physicalized at a location like ship paints. Dog shit, right? We want to get rid of that. We want to get away from that. Not a good system. Or bound to an entity like weapons and armor. So, if you are buying weapons and armor on the website, they are going to take the Canudo, my favorite sale I've ever seen. The Canudo, like the Hurston Guard armor. Love that shit. It's awesome. That is going to be a Canudo color blueprint. And it will no longer be physicalized. If one of the items that you earned in an event is converted to be item plus cosmetic blueprint, then that cosmetic blueprint will, of course, still be permanently account bound. We are not saying anything about the item. And he is leaving a door open where you can say, so it'll be okay. We'll lose the item. No. He's just conveniently not saying anything. He's not saying anything. Right? That's it. He's just not saying anything about it. But he's not saying anything about the fact that the item that you purchased will still exist. So you paid to win, and you will have that pay to win that you did. And everyone's going to get hooked on pay to win, pay to progress, pay to whatever, pay to not play the game. And CIG continues to sell themselves out of progression systems in Star Citizen. And they want their crafting mechanics to be their selling, their progression system, like they said at CitizenCon. Don't get me started on that. I don't think that's a good idea. At all. Thank you, John. Just to be very clear, a cosmetic blueprint does not craft the item itself. So again, they're trying to make themselves look like they're not making pay to win, but they will continue to sell you the items that will be account bound, that you will not lose. Ships, weapons, armor, flight blades, and so on. Yeah, he didn't like come in and say, we're getting rid of the item recovery system. We're going to an insurance system that is different. Like, that is more geared towards a player-driven economy instead of a pledge store-driven economy. This game, as far as I could see it, is building a pledge store-driven economy. That's it. This is where, you're getting baited by the sentence, I believe. So if you earned an event armor with a cool red skin, you can then craft, find, trade for a better version of that armor later on and apply your cool red event skin to it. That is the most positive thing here. That is the best thing that I read here. Because you can craft, upgrade, improve, find, whatever, a similar armor type. Let's keep using the Hurston Guard armor. Lots of people like that, right? And there's tons of different versions of it. You're allowed to continue wearing that armor and apply your favorite skin to it. Fucking fantastic. Love that for us. That's great. But again, this does not address the situation, the issues that I have with them selling FPS weapons, armors, as seemingly as skins, but you get the item as well. It creates a scenario where it's a pay to convenience thing, it's a pay to not progress, and it is a pay to never lose anything and never feel punishment. So until we find more out about the system of punishment for death and insurance, pay to feel special. Yeah, essentially. Right? So it's where's the pain? Where's the I don't want suffering for anybody or everybody, but you die, where's the punishment for it? And if we're, I can already hear you typing, the punishment is you die and you have to go all the way back to your home location and blah, 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 blah. Where's the fun in that from a video game perspective, right? That is a system of punishment that is so bad and so broken and so unenjoyable that is that the system we want to build upon? It all depends on how they implement the blueprint system. If you just buy the basic T1 armor on the store and you still have to upgrade the blueprint to get better versions, I'm fine with it. I'm not. I'm not necessarily, but it doesn't depend on the blueprint system. It depends on the crafting and upgrade system. What happens if you upgrade your armor? Let's use a ship as an example instead. What happens if you upgrade your ship to tier 5? What happens when it explodes? Does it go back to tier 1? Do you somehow pay for convenience and it goes back to 3, 4? Does it just stay at 5? They haven't decided yet. Then why the fuck is he talking? Right? If they haven't decided yet, he should not be talking. So I don't think it's that they haven't decided. I think he is a very smart person and is telling you what you want to hear while not telling you what you don't want to hear, while not manufacturing outrage. I think he is incredibly good with his words. Not in a good way. I think he's incredibly good with his words and trying to hide what their pledge store economy goals are. And that's my concern there. I don't know if that's exactly what's happening. I don't have any information on anything past what is on the screen. And I've spoken to Declan personally, where I got some things wrong at last year's CitizenCon, and he messaged me. We went back and forth, and he was awesome to talk to, and was really kind of open and like helped me understand what he was trying to explain and all that stuff, and it was good. But this, I've seen him do it twice now. He simply said, we're separating the blueprint from the skin, or we're separating the skin from the item, but never said what happens to the item when it gets destroyed, gets lost. Never said what happens to that, conveniently. And I think that trend continues here with this. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy for a player-driven economy game, in my opinion. And what I mean before by it depends on the armor system and the system of progression is if a tier 1 item is good enough, then what's the point of upgrading? What does a crafter do then? If you're forced into this crafting thing, then what does everybody have to craft? Right? It's a weird one. Then we're getting back into this new modern MMO style where everybody can do everything, and you're just playing a solo game in a multiplayer universe, and that's not healthy either. So, if they are actually making an MMO, I hope the reliance on a crafter is something that's really important, but also the reliance on, I don't know, good PvPers to defend the territory in which a crafter needs to craft or gather resources or something like that. The reliance on each other's different skills, different skill sets, different desires for gameplay. That's what an MMO sandbox is about. BPO system like Eve would have been nice. Yeah, I mean, that system's perfect. But again, that system works based on destruction and loss. This system works based on credit card purchases. And that's it. And I think I have, as somebody who hates pay to win, have been as clear and as forgiving as I possibly can be, in the sense of saying this. Video games are incredibly expensive to make, run, and maintain now. So a simple, singular purchase, especially of an MMO, is not enough. It is not enough for a player to continue to maintain that game. You need to make cosmetic purchases, or you need to have players making them, not every player. You need to have subscription models. You need to have other funding streams than just a purchase. Otherwise, these games can't pay for themselves, because once everybody's bought the game and the money is dry from continued development or maintenance, where does the income come from? You just can't, right? So we as players have to recognize that there will be additional monetization in this game. There has to be. There has to be additional monetization in Star Citizen. How they're choosing to do it is, I think it's just more detrimental to the game than it is helpful. Like New World. That is why New World is closing. New World is not closing because not enough players play it, necessarily. New World is closing because they were a buy-to-play MMO. Of course they didn't get their investment back, or not enough of it, or aren't profitable enough. Right? Yeah, battle royales after release, all that stuff. They can't maintain. So we as players have to make concessions and understand that they are going to push monetization on us. But we also as players have to push back and say, hey, this monetization is encroaching on the game. A little too much for me. For me personally, way too much. For some other people, not that much. Right? But nobody pushes back on Star Citizen at all. Ever. I'm like one of the few people who do, and just get constant hate for it. And I mean, good on you. We're going right down the wrong path, where you've already purchased everything that you could possibly do in terms of progression, and just you're going to be bored. Star Citizen will need to create, at some point, mark my fucking words, Star Citizen, out of necessity, will create a fresh start server. Or shard. Out of necessity. Because they will not be able to develop enough progression and fun just through this crafting system for players to keep interest in their game. That's my opinion. And that's where I'll leave this. Some really good news here. Some concerning news. Some sad news. And I am glad he was open about it. And I think in almost all of these cases, they're making the best of a bad situation. Even this one. I don't think Declan worked at the company when these clowns sold their first weapons and armors. Because I think I recall in like 2015 or something like that going, this is not a good idea, guys, because they're gonna have to separate these, and it's gonna be so much work to have to separate them. And here we are, and I got shit for it then. This is the best of a bad situation that was already created way too long ago. But I also think Declan somehow is developing for the Pledge Store and not making the best game he possibly can make. Not that he makes these decisions or not, I have no idea. But that's the feeling that I'm getting from this. And that's it.